BarbacoaCore, a podcast network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the X Lives podcast. I am your host, Patrick C. Huerta. On this podcast, we talk about our present, our future, and more importantly, our past, the good, the bad, and the fuzzy. Stories from our X lives. Like, share, and subscribe on whichever platform you use to listen to the podcast. Follow the BarbacoaCore Podcast Network on Instagram and Facebook at BarbacoaCore. All the links to most of our podcast platforms can be found on the website www.barbacoacore.com. Any questions, comments, or to share your stories from your past on the X Lives podcast, send emails to xlivespod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy these episodes. This is X Lives. What is up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of X Lives. It's just a solo episode. I had to cancel my guest for this week because I picked up a couple of spots for tonight. I usually record on Wednesday, and I'm trying to stick to that schedule just so I could have an actual schedule for podcasting and then going out for comedy, open mics, or if anything comes up. So instead of just not putting out an episode, I just thought I would put out a solo episode just to get in more detail about what X Lives is pretty much all about, really. Just to make sure that that whoever wants to come on or whoever plans to listen knows what they're getting themselves into, more or less, you know. And the whole X Lives concept is just, we all have our backstories. Like with me, I spent a lot of my late teens and 20s, in rock bands. I moved a few times to pursue the dream of being a touring rock band, a rock star per se, I guess. And but that's all behind me. Yeah, I still talk about it a lot today because it did have a big impact on who I am, and I use a lot of things that I've learned from that experience. Today, especially with comedy. Now that I'm doing the whole comedy thing, jumping into that. A lot of my experience, I try to, because I kind of feel it's kind of linear. I mean, it's an art form. It's performing, performance, preparations, all that thing. It's kind of like the same thing when with bands. So yeah, I do talk about it. I look back fondly on different memories. I mean, it wasn't all good. There were some bad times and stuff, some rough times, being poor, being somewhat homeless, sleeping in rehearsal studios, going days without sleeping because you had to work and perform and rehearse and do all that stuff. So it was a struggle. There's a lot of struggle when you go into something like that, with anything that you try to pursue. Especially with art and performing, it's hard. It's a struggle, and you got to put a lot of effort into it. So I kind of did that with music. I really pushed it as hard as I could. I mean, I could have done more. Obviously, I could have hustled more. Could have sacrificed more. And I mean, a lot of that goes unseen. It goes kind of behind the behind the scenes type of thing. If you hear a band, you think, oh, they came out of nowhere and they're big. It doesn't really happen like that. I think there's rare stories. I think Linkin Park was signed before they even played a show or something like that. But they're more of a pop rock band. I mean, yeah, they scream and shit, but they're a pop band. They have an image to sell. So I mean, they're like an NSYNC or a what's the other one? Backstreet Boys. Or, to me, I mean, I'm just saying there's different ways, just depending on the genre of music. But yeah, either way, that's not the point of this. So yeah, so I like to talk about that. That is part of my past. That is my stories. That is my ex lives. Um, I would like to have people come in, find out about them, get to know about what they're doing now, what they're into now. Most of them are going to be comedians because that's the circle I run in with. Meeting them, hanging out with them at mics and stuff, and just learning more about them. I'm like, dude, I would like to sit down with you and do a podcast about this. Let's get deep into it. Um, and I'm always honored when people want to come on. And even if you've done the old podcast, the BarbacoaCore podcast, that's still there. I'm gonna keep that all online for the archives because those episodes were really fun. Um, but even past guests, if you were on the BarbacoaCore podcast and you want to do the X Lives podcast with a whole new kind of format, the idea, everybody's welcome to come on. The only thing I do ask though is that I need to make sure that we have a kind of conversation chemistry going on. I like to bring in people that I know, or at least people that I know of. You know, it's great. People want to come on the podcast and they reach out to me and stuff, and it's great. I'm honored that anybody wants to spend their time doing this, and that's also a thing that I do as a thank you for anybody that takes the time to come and do the podcast with me. I become like your biggest supporter, maybe not the biggest, but a supporter of whatever you do. So that's why you'll see me repost or share anything that you have going on, like shows. Anything you post on Instagram, I like to repost on the BarbacoaCore Instagram page. Same thing with the Facebook page, but algorithms, maybe people don't see it as much. And that's just me saying thank you for giving me an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of your time just to come and just talk shit on a podcast. So yeah, I do appreciate people coming up to me and say, "Hey man, can I get on your podcast?" And I'm like, "Great! Like, who are you?" Um, and not to be an asshole to anybody, but I just need to make sure that it's something that's going to be worth both of our times. So it's good if I know more about you, if I see you out more, and I kind of get an idea what you are or what you do, not what you are, but like who you are, what you do. And maybe if you do have not automatic, but an interesting backstory, I would like to get you on and we'll talk about it and stuff. But I mean, we need to be able to have some kind of like conversation chemistry off mic, because we can't just force it. Um, it would just make for better podcast episodes if we had that in place already with that. So yeah, anybody who is interested in getting on, feel free to email xlivespod@gmail.com. Just to send like a little information. Again, you could talk to me in person. We could try to get that situated or scheduled and stuff. If you've done the BarbacoaCore podcast, thank you for doing that. And if you want to do the X Lives podcast, we'll set that up. All the guests that I've had on the BarbacoaCore podcast are all more than welcome to come back. I enjoyed all of them. I'm still friends with them. I still support them. Each and every one of those people. And so yeah, I mean, if you do have an ex live story, a past story, or even just like funny stories from a long time ago that you want to just dive into on the pod, like yeah, reach out to me and we'll set that up. Um, but first and foremost, I mean, it has to be somebody that like I have an interest in, or that I want to learn more about. Because yeah, you can't really get to know people at these open mics. It's pretty hectic. It's pretty loud, and you don't really have time to like sit down and get deep into a conversation or anything like that. But that's the whole point of this podcast. I like long form conversations. I like to keep it one on one. There may be some one offs where I have like a group of people, but they have to be people that I really know, that really know each other, just so it's not a bunch of like crosstalk and just like a chaos conversation type of thing. It's easier on the listeners. It's easier on us to keep track of what's actually going on. So I do prefer the one-on-one kind of episodes. Every now and then, I mean, if like I have a tight group of friends that we kind of understand each other already. We kind of know where to let people go, how to lead them if they set up a joke or something. I don't know. I mean, you know how conversations work. And it's the same thing with podcasting. You just need to make sure that it is there's a flow to it, and that you got to keep the listener in mind at all times. And that's still something I'm learning. Obviously, I'm not saying that I understand how it all works, but I'm just saying I kind of get an idea of how I want this one to go. So yeah, and I'm still trying to get the actual podcast network up and going. I've talked to a few people about uh, me hosting their audio files on my site. And again, that's not anything like I'm not going to make you a better person. Nobody needs me to post their podcast. It's just the whole idea of being a part of a network, so we can all kind of feed off of each other's listeners. You know, introduce them, different listeners to different types of episodes, different types of people, whether they're comedians or any type of artist or anybody that creates kind of content as a podcast, are all more than welcome to jump onto the network. And that's all for free. Any services, as far as if you want me to actually record, produce, uh, excuse me, do any mixing, and anything I have to do, like add, do any editing or add sound effects or anything like that, yeah, that will be a different charge, or that would be an actual charge, just depending on how much you are requesting, or how much your podcast requires. But I mean, it'll be like just a low rate. I'm not gonna try to make money off of anybody. Just trying to offer my time, the equipment that I have, the podcast equipment, the mic, the actual recorder, anything like that. So yeah, you could also reach out to me on that. But yeah, if anybody's is just interested in coming on the podcast, I do have a couple people that I want to reach out to and actually sit down with to join the network, and just getting all that together. I've talked to a few people, got a few people's interested, but yeah, that's another thing I'm trying to do to get the BarbacoaCore podcast network up and running. Focus on the X Lives podcast, get that going, book some more guests. I had to reschedule the one that I had lined up for today, and hopefully I might get this posted up tonight. Again, this is Wednesday night. Gonna try to have it posted up before I head out to do these two spots that I have tonight. But yeah, something had came up recently, and I just want to touch base on that, and then I'll get into an old story that kind of, this whole current situation kind of reminded me of an old story about my first U.S. tour that I did, because there's kind of similarities, I guess. So it's a small community, comedy community, and everybody kind of knows everybody pretty much. And people talk. A lot of people like to talk behind people's backs, but you got to realize that there, there's friendships already built with certain people. So talking about somebody or talking behind somebody's back, especially online, like where there's actual like documentation, there's messages, there's text messages, there's messenger, there's Facebook posts, there's all this stuff that you do online. I mean, you have to know that people will have kind of not really loyalty, that's a little bit much, but information. I mean, things are going to get to the person who you don't want them to get to, right? And that's just how it is. Especially with a small community that's in San Antonio, just a small comedy community. If you're open mic comic, if you're a comedian in San Antonio, or you at least recognize the faces of the people who are in that scene. You know their names. You see them all the time. There's not many of us. There's a lot of people, but there's not many. So there was a situation where this guy, and it's what sucks is that he books a room in San Antonio, and I hate to burn bridges, And honestly, I much rather be liked above anything, but well, more than anything, I would like to be liked by everybody, but I'd rather be respected than liked. So when I found out that this person was talking about me, you know, trying to really dog me to a friend of mine, I got word of it and I asked him about it, the guy who was talking behind my back. And pretty much all he's saying is that he doesn't book me for certain reasons. And then which, whatever, book me, don't book me, it's fine. But he also accused me of being a joke thief, which is pretty serious, because you're pretty much taking away anything that the person has built up in their act. You're saying that they stole it from everybody. And the whole reason why this person was starting to call me, and he called a few of us out, but because he got called out for being a joke thief, for stealing something that we thought belonged to one particular comic. Um, he admitted that he'd never heard it from this one comic. He's like, I've heard it in this special, or heard it on this TV show, I heard it from this other major comedian, which is the same thing. I mean, you're still stealing from somebody. Maybe not the source that we all thought you were stealing from, but you're still admitting to stealing that joke. Or it's not even the joke. It's a tag from somebody. No big deal. I wasn't going to call him out, but he got called out by a few people. So how he decides to go about it was to start naming everybody that he doesn't work with for different reasons, and then he start naming people that in his opinion are joke thieves. Not even in his opinion. He said that he could prove it. Which you could have an opinion saying I think that's a joke thief, or if you telling somebody I have proof, I could name all the jokes that he stole. That's what I have a problem with. Because there's a difference between stealing an actual joke or parallel thinking. Yes, we all have fat jokes. We all have Mexican jokes. If you're Hispanic, whatever. Family jokes, parent jokes, childhood jokes. Yeah, we're all going to touch on similar topics. I mean, there's only so much. Everything's really hacked by now. So if you're calling somebody a joke thief, just make sure you understand what a joke thief is. Stealing somebody's joke word for word is being a thief. Talking about something that somebody has already talked about is not the same thing. There's parallel thinking. That's going to happen. That's obviously going to happen. The point is to try to avoid that, try to become like have an original opinion on it, a different type of opinion, a different point of view on it. That's the hard part. That's the art of joke writing. Is it new? Is it fresh? Is it different? Um, is it funny? Is it entertaining? All that stuff. But anyway, this guy's telling people that he doesn't book me uh, for whatever, and that he knows that I'm a joke thief. And again, I rather be liked by everybody for sure, but I rather be more important. I'm gonna be respected. You don't have to like me, but you will respect me. And talking behind my back and trying to belittle me to people that you should know are my friends. So you need to know that if you're talking to somebody, just know that it's not going to get to that person who you're talking about. You know, or just don't talk about behind people's backs. It's that easy. Um. So anyway, so I reached out to him. You know, and I was like, you don't have to book me. Maybe I could have said it nicely or in a nicer way, but I was like, you don't have to book me for this because of this, that, the other. Um, and I was like, you can name jokes that I've stole, then name them. And he blocked me and unfriended me without responding. And then he continues to trash talk me to the person who he knows revealed all the shit that he was saying, which is like, okay, man, like, why are you gonna keep continuing with this? Um, but the fact that I have friends in this community that would rather stand up for me, have my back on something like this, because it is a major accusation. Well, not a major, but it's a serious accusation to accuse somebody of stealing jokes. You're pretty much taking their whole craft, and I say that in quotes, their whole craft away, and saying that what they've been working on this whole time, what they go out and work on every night, is something that is stolen, something that's stolen, which is pretty serious. You know, I don't know how to make that crossover to non-comic, to more of a civilian kind of situation, but it's a serious accusation. But and knowing that this guy books a certain room, people still will stand up for me, will have my back, and would even not take shows from this guy because of the things that he's saying about me, which I appreciate that, and I know what you're trying to do. Like you're siding with me, and you're saying like if I work with this guy, then I'm not doing the friend thing. That is not true. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having my back. The few people that didn't, but I mean, there's not a lot of rooms. There's not a lot of places to go. So if he offers you a show, take the show, regardless of what he thinks of me or whether or not he'll book me. Like, I mean, you got stage time is stage time. I don't want nobody to lose out on that. Because they got my back, you've proved your point. I mean, you still kept me in the know, and that's all I would ask of anybody, is to just make sure that nobody's dogging me. Because if he's telling this to friends of mine, then I don't. Who knows who he's telling to outside of my circle? And again, it's a small comedy community, and if people get a bad impression of you, that could affect whether or not you get booked places, which sucks. So the fact that he has power to book, or that he books a certain room, he books certain shows, it does suck that he does have this opinion on me, and I mean, I regret not calling him out on it, because again, if you're gonna talk behind my back, I'm gonna ask you about it and get to the bottom of it, and you could either back up what you say, or you could just block me, which is what he did. But so thank you to the friends that had my back on that brought it to my attention, and that actually canceled a couple shows because they were his shows. I appreciate that. I am that's an awesome gesture for sure, but you don't have to do that. It's a personal thing between me and him. And if he wants to book you for shows, man, and if it's a show that you want to do at a place you want to do it at, and you agree with the performers that are on the bill and ticket prices, all that stuff. I mean, you make that call. You do the show. Don't do it. Or don't cancel in spite of me or whatever. Yeah, but that's cool. It's good to know that I have people, in my corner. I have people that would kind of like look out for me, type of thing. I mean, yeah, it's nothing serious. It's just words. It's just people talking behind their backs. But it's still I still appreciate it. But so yeah, take the show, work with this dude. Don't not take stage time for this. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. I probably won't get booked there unless somebody else books me for that place, and that's fine. I don't have to work with this guy. Like, it's a small community. I'm gonna see him around. Like, in fact, I'm closing out a show with him tonight. He goes on directly before I do, at a place, and so it is what it is. I mean, I'm still gonna be around, and yeah, he'll be around as long as he's around. So yeah, but it did bring back, reminded me about a tour that I did. My first tour, I was living in Seattle. This was back in 2008. 2008. It was a U.S. tour with a band called UGLYHEAD, and UGLYHEAD, they play the outro music, on the episodes. Was at the beginning of the BarbacoaCore podcast. They played the intro music and the outro music, on an album called The Garden, which I played drums on. So that's why I was stoked to use it. But yeah, 2008, a band called Uglyhead put out a Craigslist post looking for available musicians to tour. And I replied to this post and met up with Jake of Uglyhead, and we rehearsed for 4 weeks, and then we hit the road. Now I heard like I also took my friend Brian, the guitar player. Brian is from He Whose Ox Is Gourd, which I later joined in with. Um, a couple years later, maybe after we got back from this tour. So yeah, I had just met Brian also through Craigslist when I was trying to look for bands while I was in Seattle, and I got this opportunity to go tour. I knew Brian had done a few tours already, and that he was down to go, and so we agreed. All three complete strangers, pretty much. I knew Brian maybe a month before that, a couple of months, maybe a month. I knew Brian maybe a month before that, um, and then met Jake. We rehearsed for 4 weeks, and then Jake hired a driver called uh, Tim. Tim something I don't remember. But because none of us had a van, none of us had a vehicle, he hired a driver because the driver wanted to go on the road. I think he was on disability, so he had the money, the time, the availability, and the van to go. He was much older. Tim was probably in his 60s. You know, we were all in our 20s. I think I was a bit at 2008, so I was maybe 24, 25, 23, something like that. We were all about that age. I think I was the oldest, so everybody was 23, 24, 22, whatever. And then we were in this van with Timmy, going all over the U.S. Um, and we found out very quick that Tim was insane. He was a shitty driver. He was a chain smoker, and he smoked these clove cigarettes. And I want to say this before I get into it. I do not want to trivialize anybody who has PTSD. I don't mean it like that. I just don't know how else to explain that for the longest time, and still today, if I smell clove cigarettes, I fucking freak out. I seriously freak out because it brings all the stress back from just being trapped in a car in a van with tons of equipment and just constantly smelling clove cigarettes and dealing with an insane, unstable driver that we never met before. And now we're living with this guy for 20 days, something like that. The tour was supposed to take us all down the West Coast, across through Texas, and then up to the East Coast, and then across, uh, the top of the United States, all the way back to Seattle. Day one, it was sketchy. You know, we don't know if Tim's seen stuff. He's freaked out all the time. Other cars scare him. He doesn't really, he doesn't really make sense when he talks. He's a weird, insane, unstable character for sure. Constantly smoking clove cigarettes, and if you don't know what the clove cigarettes are, they're like a cigar slash cigarette, with a very sweet, sweet smell to it. The smoke is like a sweet, very gross smell to it. And I don't even think you're supposed to inhale those things. I think you're supposed to smoke them like a cigar, just blow them out, just kind of enjoy the vibe of them. But this guy was smoking nonstop, inhaling those cigarettes, smoker's cough, you know, fucking spitting up lung butter the whole time. It was disgusting. Go through Portland, go through California. California, he starts getting really freaked out because, again, also another thing, he is a vegetarian. but we're cheap. We're on a budget, so we do fast food. So the only thing that he's eating is French fries. It's the only thing he's eating. Now, I'm not saying anything against French fries, but I'm pretty sure just living on French fries and what are those Cliff Bars can't be good. It wasn't good. He's losing his mind. Every stop is different, and or every stop's the same thing. He's fucking crazy. He's sketched out at every stop, and from California, he really had a beef against me. Even though he was a driver, we did switch off driving every now and then, and I've never driven a car that's being weighed down so heavy with equipment. I mean, we had speakers, we had drum sets, we had keyboards, a light setup, all this stuff in an Astro van type of thing, and so yeah, adjusting to that, especially going into California, it's very hilly, your steep hills, so he gets upset because he thinks I'm purposely trying to ruin his car, his transmission, which I'm like, I have that. What sense does that make? What do I have to gain? I want to see the world, the world. I want to travel the U.S. playing music. I want to get home because we were stopping in San Antonio for a day or two. Like I wanted to do all this stuff. Why would I want us to have car troubles at any time? But he's saying that I'm doing it on purpose. He goes crazy, and I don't know if that's what triggered him to hate me, but he fucking hated me. Every chance he got, he would talk shit to me, talk shit about me. He didn't want me on the tour at all, but he didn't realize that I was the drummer. I was kind of an important part. Well, we were all important parts. There was a drum, a synth player, singer, and then a guitar player, Brian. Um, and we all hated him. He was a scary, fucking sketchy dude. Um, Fast forward, make it through California. He's making up stories. He's telling them that he's telling the other guys that I am talking about him. I'm telling bartenders not to serve him, which is not true. I even offered to let him drink, and I would drive. Because he liked to drink. He drank a lot, and he would drive us. And I was like, this isn't safe. So trying to be the nice guy, I would say, "How about you drink and I'll drive us to our next stop." Fuck you. You ain't driving my car. Fuck you. I don't even want you in my car. Um, so yeah, get to California, made it through Albuquerque, had a good time in Albuquerque because Brian's from Albuquerque. Made it through, made it down to Texas. That was good. Get to play in Texas in front of my family, in front of my friends. That was cool. Make it up all the way up to New York. Now in New York, we had a few, or on our way to New York, we had a few shows canceled. So we had like 3 days off in New York, and Brian knew somebody who lived up there, who lived in the Brownstone in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy area, um, that just so happened to have an extra room, an open room available. So great. So we get there, we get all the stuff unloaded. We're staying in this room. I don't know these people, so I'm trying to make them as comfortable as possible. I'm trying to be as nice as possible, trying to have conversations with them. There's three people living in the house: a brother and a sister, and I think a friend, something like that. So the brother comes in, and he's a chef. He's a chef at this you know, high star, whatever, 4 star, 5 star restaurant, whatever, big time thing. And so he comes in, and I'm just like asking him all these questions, like, "Oh man, that's cool," because I think they're from Florida. They had just moved to New York not too long ago, so I'm just asking them like all about it. Let them get to know me, put them at ease that that we're going to be staying in their house for the next 3 days, um, complete strangers. And I'm trying to have a conversation with him, and then Tim somehow gets shit faced drunk. We didn't even know that he had alcohol. Gets shit faced drunk and interrupts me and the brother who is renting the house, who rents the house, and just saying, "Don't trust this guy." Pointing to me, "Don't trust this guy. He steals from people. He's fucked up my camera. He's broke my camera. He broke my van." saying all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, you gotta chill out. You're telling these people that had opened up their home to us for the next 3 days that that I steal, that I break stuff, that I don't have respect for people and their property. Like you gotta stop. So the people who rent the place, who are allowing us to stay, are very uncomfortable. They're trying to just write it off like, oh, he's drunk, he's talking on his mind. And then Tim gets in my face and he's like, I'm not doing this anymore with you. You need to fucking go home. You're never getting in my van again. I don't want to see you ever again. Get out of my face. Get out of here. Throw this thief out of here. All this stuff. So I go inside. I look for Jake and Brian. I was like, dude, you need to fucking get this guy settled down. You know, he's going crazy. He's scaring our host. We you need to make sure that he is calm. You need to take his alcohol away. You need to calm him down. We just got here. All this stuff. They calm him down, but he's lost it on me. You know, he's telling the guys, let's just continue the tour without him. Send him home. I don't care how he gets home. I don't care where he goes, but he's not getting in my van. I refuse to have him in my van any longer. I'm not taking him anywhere. If he stays, I go, whatever that shit. And without hesitation, they said, all right, you go. And Jake still gave him a few $100s for gas money because he had to make it all the way to Seattle somehow, you know. And even though I would have said, fuck this guy, don't give him any money. He's broke. He's all this stuff. He's insane. They, without hesitation, they said, okay, if you don't want Patrick in the car, then you fucking leave. We'll take all our stuff out and you fucking go. Take the van. Tour's canceled. We don't give a fuck. This whole time I was listening to their conversation. Oh, they had another thing. They stashed me up in another bedroom, which overlooked the backyard, courtyard, which all this insanity stuff was going on. So I'm not really involved, but I could hear everything that's going on. I could see the window out to the backyard. I see their conversation and stuff. So I'm watching this stuff, and I think, fuck, they're sending me home. I don't even know how I'm gonna get home. I'm broke. Where do I even go? Do I go to San Antonio? Do I go back to Seattle? I got all my stuff. I'm freaking out. Don't know what I'm gonna do. They say, well, you go. If you want to go, if this is how you're gonna be, we side with Patrick, and you fucking go. You get lost. I don't give a fuck. Which was insane to me because how again we're strangers. We known each other 4 weeks. We rehearsed for 4 weeks. We're on the road. We're strangers to each other on the road. We're just learning each other about each other. Yeah, we get in people on each other's nerves. I don't know if you've ever been on tour with anybody. I don't know if you've ever been on a long car ride with anybody or a cross country road trip with anybody, but you don't do those with strangers because they're not going to end well. You can do those with people that you know, that you love, that you have an understanding for. You don't do that with strangers because your personalities aren't linked up yet. You don't know who they are. You don't know how they are. You don't know what they need, what they require, anything. So the fact that we did this was a risky thing to begin with. We made it all the way to New York. We were trying to have the best time. Some of the shows aren't going as good. The attendance wasn't going as good. We're kind of losing money. No, we are losing money on this, and but we're still trying to keep it together. We're trying to have a good time. And our first night in New York, where we're supposed to have a relaxing time, 3 days to relax, no traveling, not stuck in a van, and he loses his shit, and he threatens the rest of the band or the two other guys. Um, it's me or Patrick, and they sided with me, which left them stranded in New York with me, which was an insane thing to do. Even if they called off the whole tour, they could have started heading back to Seattle without me. You know, even if they believed anything that he had said, that they believed that I was a thief, that they believed that I was stealing money, that I was breaking his equipment, that I was telling bartenders not to sell him. If they believed any of that, I would have definitely been left in New York by myself, you know. But they didn't. They took my side. Um, Thankfully, so. I was on my best behavior. Um, we unloaded all our stuff, the rest of our stuff, from the van. Uh, Jake gave him $200 or something, and he left. And then we had to figure out what the fuck we're gonna do. We still had a show to do at the Trash Bar in Brooklyn, I believe it's in Brooklyn. We still had a New York gig to do, and now we're trying to figure out how we're gonna get home. What are we gonna do to get home? You know, all this story, all this stuff. Jake did a whole tour journal, Uglyhead 2008 U.S. Fall Tour Journal. Goes more into detail. If you're interested in the story at all, please check it out. I'm just going over the rough bits of it, but you can see that at uglyheadmusic.com. Just look for Uglyhead 2008 U.S. Fall Tour Journal. He'll go into, of course, from his point of view, but he'll go into detail about the whole thing. It's an insane read. If you're interested at all, it's a good read. Um, but yeah, we survived to that. I'll just give you the a spoiler alert on that if you do plan on reading it. We did the gig in New York. We um, we tried our best to sell anything that we could, any equipment. Um, so Jake had a friend back home that is kind of like a record label person or somebody who helps with the band and with the record labels. Post a PayPal, not a PayPal. What is it called? Like a group funding thing. We got money from that. Told him the story. We're stranded in New York. Need to get back to Seattle. Raised money on that. Sold equipment, whatever we could. Shipped whatever we could. I had to ship my drums. A lot of my drums and stuff. I had to ship back to Seattle, which was not cheap. Um, and then Jake bought us all, or Jake and the record label bought us a train ticket, train from New York to Seattle, which takes 4 days, which is really long to be on a train. But they didn't have to. They when we struggled, we had to carry whatever else we had through the subway station to Penn Station to take the train to start back to Seattle. Tours canceled. The tour, I mean, depending on, I believe Jake feels like it was a loss. He felt very defeated because he spent months. He spent months planning this whole thing, hoping for the best, and he felt bad. He had two strangers that probably hated his guts. We don't. We didn't, and we don't. We're all still connected. We're still friends. I'm a big supporter of Uglyhead music. He's still putting out music today. He asked me to play drums on the Guardian album that he put out a couple years ago. I was happy to do that. Um, but it's stuff like that. Like this thing that happened recently with people trying to make give you a bad name, put turn people against you, and people knowing that, your truth, knowing that you're not about anything malicious. And I'm not saying I'm 100% of a good guy, but I'm not a bad person. You know, And so these strangers that I met to do this U.S. tour back in 2008 somehow saw that, somehow knew that. And maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe they were just sick of the driver, and I'm fine with that too. If that's the case, I'm 100%. I back that because I was tired of that guy too. He's a crazy motherfucker. I wanted to get rid of him from day five. Um, but they um, they put themselves in a bad position because they had my back. You know, um, which is it's a tough feeling. I felt very responsible for the struggle that we had to endure because of that, because of the driver leaving, and he left because it was either me or him. So I did feel bad about that, but I also felt good to know that people would take one for the team. if they have to. And they're good friends of mine. Like I said, I was in another band with Brian. I was in He Who's Oxford's Gourd with Brian. We did some tours with him. Recorded a few tracks with them, and I still consider them family. Jake and Brian are like family to me. Yeah, we're not close. We only talk, through social medias and stuff. But I'm proud and I support everything that they do because of that, because of the actions that they took when push came to shove, and when they could have abandoned me, and then we would never have seen each other ever again. Um, if I was in their shoes, I would hope that I would do the same thing. But I am weak and not as strong as some people, um, and I don't like struggle. Well, I mean, I don't like struggle anymore. I've done a lot of struggling, and because of stuff that happened in the past, like my tolerance for people and my bullshit, well, that's the bullshit that I will put up with, has dwindled because of all the bullshit that I've had to go through earlier on. And so I feel bad for my the people that are currently in my life, because they don't get the slack that a lot of people in my earlier days got the slack of for whatever. Um, but yeah, that is a story from my past. That is one of my ex lives. The Uglyhead tour, 2008 fall tour, U.S. tour. I was so stoked about it. And to be honest with you, if somebody said, "Well, if you go back, would you do that same tour?" Yes, knowing that it's gonna be exactly that, knowing that it's gonna be everything's the same, nothing changes. Would you put yourself through that situation again? 100%. Yes, I would. Um, because whether or not I could like explain it to you, living through that has taught me a lot about myself, what I'm capable of, a lot about people, what people are capable of for you, um, and just like, yeah, 100%, I would do it again. Uh, all right, that's all I want to do for this one. Thank you again for listening. I hope you appreciate, not appreciate. I hope you enjoy these episodes. I hope you appreciate this shit. No, I hope you enjoy these episodes. This is a very fun concept that I'm very stoked about. I want to get more people on, find out more stories from their past, their crazy ex lives. So yeah, reach out. Uh, xlivespod@gmail.com, or even if you just want me to read a story, just a little short story or whatever on the podcast. Share your stories, because your past makes you who you are today, and that's a beautiful thing. For the most part, it could be a bad thing, but let's focus on the good. What crazy shit from your past kind of made you who you are today? You know what I mean? That's what the X Lives podcast is all about. Thank you for listening. I gotta get this uploaded, and I got to get to those two spots that I have tonight. Yeah, that's it. Check out the BarbacoaCore.com for all the links to all the podcasts. Like, share, subscribe. Any show dates, follow me on Instagram at Patrick C. Huerta. Follow the BarbacoaCore Podcast Network on Instagram at BarbacoaCore. Like, share, subscribe, follow. Thank you. See you next week.